Okay, that's okay. Okay, I'll wait till you finish. We'll start in just a moment. So, yes, I'll give you time. Yeah, light everything. No hurry. Just everything's happening quickly today. All set? Okay, that's okay. So we will begin. Begin as always with the chant. I don't know how to begin any other way. So, Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedangscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamhadevam Atmabuddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. We who seek liberation take refuge in that infinite light which illuminates the hearts of all, which is the source of the Creator himself, and who breathes forth the infinite knowledge known as Veda. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om Peace, Peace, Peace be unto us all. So, friends, it gives me great joy to be able to introduce the program tonight. We've had a wonderful weekend so far. Last night, some of you were here, many of you were here last night for the program. The satsang with Swami Sarvadevananda ji and atmajnanananda ji. Swami Sarvadevananda ji, the head, as you know, of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, also the head of this center, the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston, also the head of the Washington, D.C. Center, the Vedanta Society of Greater Washington, D.C., also the head of Ridgely Manor, the Vivekananda Retreat at Ridgely Manor, plus the director of a number of private centers around the country. And so he is our own, our own Swami, the president of this society, the spiritual head of this society. And Swami Atmajnanananda ji, as those of you who were here last night know, is a dear friend of mine, whom I've known for many years, since 1979, and or was it 78? 78, yes, because 79 early I took sannyasa. So I first met him as a brahmachari, when I was a brahmachari, about to take sannyasa. So a dear friend of mine for many, many years, a long association we've had, and a dear friend, and he's built a wonderful center in Washington, D.C., which some of you have seen. And joining us today is Mataji Pravrajika Brahmaprana. She directs the Vedanta Society of North Texas in Irving, which is really Dallas, in between Dallas and Fort Worth. So she has been there for 14 years, I believe. Yes, since 2008, doing wonderful work. The center has developed very beautifully under her guidance, and that also is under Swami Sarvadevananda ji. It's not yet an official center. That is an officially affiliated center, and those of you who have been with the Houston Center for long know what that means, the process that you have to go through to get the center from a private center status to an affiliated center. So that has not yet happened in Dallas, but as a private center, she has been ably directing it, developing it for 14 years. And that also is a delightful center where I've been several times to give retreats. And Swami Sarvadevananda ji and Atmajnanananda ji are going there from here along with Mataji on Monday, where they'll have programs there. So again, last night we had a beautiful program here. This morning we had an initiation ceremony in which Maharaj gave initiation to 11 people. A 12th person was scheduled to be there, but she was very ill, had to be hospitalized. And so, but still, here in this hall, we had 11 initiations this morning, a very holy occasion, which creates a wonderful atmosphere. So I'm glad that you could come this evening in particular so that you can be a part of that, imbibe the atmosphere that was created. And then tomorrow, of course, you know, we have the big program at Trinity, the new retreat, which I hope all of you can come to. So tonight, I can't call it night. This afternoon, Swami Sarvadevananda ji, Swami Atmajnanananda ji, and Mataji brahmaprana, they will speak on meditation. So first, Pravrajika Brahmaprana will speak on supporting practices for meditation. And then Swami Atmajnanananda ji will speak, and then Swami Sarvadevananda ji. So I ask Mataji to come, take her seat here, and begin.
Hearing aids and masks don't go well together. Okay. Is that good enough? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, revered Maharaj, Swami Atmarupananda, Swami Atmajnanananda, Brahmachari Dhruva, friends, devotees, it's a real privilege to be here. It's a real joy. My topic is supporting practices for meditation. Well, it would be study of the scriptures, holy company, satsang, devotional singing, pilgrimage. These are a few of the practices that support our daily meditation. And I'm sure you do all of these. Holy reading. Swami Madhavananda, the 9th president of the Ramakrishna order, encouraged the monks of Bellarmine to read 1 or 2 pages of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna every evening before bedtime. There's a wealth of knowledge in the Gospel. Scriptural, spiritual, psychological, practical insights in just 1 paragraph. And that way we can end our day on a very high note and allow Sri Ramakrishna's words to enter into our consciousness in sleep. In the morning after breakfast at our Santa Barbara convent, we would read for 10 minutes from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Those times brought our community together. We had about 12 or 13 nuns at that time, and it would re-inspire us with our purpose in life before we enter the field of karma yoga every day. And along with morning meditation, this practice helped us to set the intention for the day. And I also happened to see a very close devotee couple who read together after their breakfast every morning, and I was inspired to see that. Once I asked Swami Sarvadevananda, who was a disciple of Swami Shivananda and the former head of the Vedanta Society of Sacramento, we were talking about consciousness. He was a wonderful Advaitin, and he was also a wonderful Bhakta. So we were on the topic of consciousness, and I asked him, is there more consciousness in some scriptures than others? And he said emphatically, yes. The 10 major Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the writings of Swami Vivekananda. When I was working on volume 9 of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Swami Sarvadevananda from the Vedanta Society of Providence in Boston, he was a disciple of Swami Akhandananda, asked to see my study where I was working on the 9th volume. He came down there, he stood in the middle of the room, and he gave an unforgettable insight into Vivekananda's writings. He said, in Vivekananda's lectures, he was speaking to the world. In his letters, he was speaking to his close friends and intimate disciples. And in his poetry, he was speaking to his own soul. Don't touch a word of his poetry. Swami Sarvadevananda encouraged the nuns in Santa Barbara to gather every evening after Arati in the convent living room and read aloud from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, because, as he said, it creates an atmosphere. At those times, Swami would illustrate certain passages of the Gospel with unpublished stories of Sri Ramakrishna, his own reminiscences that he heard firsthand from the direct disciples or disciples of direct disciples, and his own reminiscences of Holy Mother. And that created such a thunderous atmosphere. I was still a college student, not yet a nun, and yet I would stay overnight in the only room the convent had available for me, the laundry room. But to me, it was heaven on earth, because those evening sessions are what made me a nun, hearing an oral tradition as yet unpublished. I remember thinking, my God, I am so close to the inner circle, the orbit of an incarnation of God. And now many of those intimate and powerful stories are published. And when we read and reread them, we feel we're in the living presence of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and the direct disciples. And that practice of reading their lives awakens the spiritual current in our minds, and over time, it strengthens it. We're hardwired as human beings to remember stories. We like stories. We can hook our mind around them. They stay with us. And vignettes from the lives of the saints, the seers, the avatars illuminate for us sometimes abstruse passages in the scriptures that we could not otherwise understand. Once, when asked how to study the Bhagavad Gita, Swami Turiyananda said, take one verse at a time, memorize it, meditate upon it, and live it for a week, and then move on to the next verse. What happens when we do this? The verse deepens our insight, and we become a more active participant in our own spiritual life. How? We become the commentator of the verse as it begins to act on and modify our actions, and in turn purifies the internal organ that motivates our actions, the mind. Devotional singing. Devotional singing has a profound preparatory effect on our meditation. Two of the Arati songs we sing every night, Kandana Baba Bandana and Om Ring Ritang, were written by Vivekananda in Bhava. No wonder they create such a deep spiritual atmosphere when played and sung. After composing the hymn Om Ring Ritang, Vivekananda handed it over to his disciple, Sarat Chandra Chakravarti, and said, see if there is any metrical defect in these stanzas. You see, he said, as I write, immersed in thought, grammatical slips sometimes occur. Therefore, I ask you all to look over them. About music, Vivekananda said, music is the highest art, and to those who understand it, it is the highest worship. Swami Brahmananda, his brother disciple, always had a band of musicians or a singer with him. One time, when a fine musician was playing musical scales, Maharaj went into a spiritual mood. A devotee complained that no devotional songs were being played, and this jarred Maharaj. He turned to the devotee and said, don't you realize that sound is Brahman? Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage also brings a tangible support to our meditation practice. There's a Sanskrit saying, places of pilgrimage are made holy by the visits of the seers of God. But realized souls don't need to visit holy places or temples because they have realized the living God everywhere. Nevertheless, those who are illumined often journey to places of pilgrimage because they find there a greater manifestation of God. In 1979, when I first visited India with another brahmacharini and a sannyasini, we were at Bellarmine. Swami Nityaswarupananda, disciple of Sarada Devi, when he heard I was going to Dakshineshwar, said to me, memorize every nook and cranny of that place so you can remember it later in your mind's eye. In this case, pilgrimage can strengthen our meditation on the divine Leela of Sri Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, Swami Vivekananda, and the other direct disciples. All spots associated with profound incidents that took place there. The semicircular porch at Dakshineshwar, the place where Sri Ramakrishna gave Narayan the touch that gave him the first experience of the impersonal reality. The veranda facing Mathur Babu's mansion, the proprietor of Dakshineshwar, who, looking through his window, saw Sri Ramakrishna pacing to and fro, and as he approached, he was Mother Kali, and as he turned, he was Lord Shiva. Mathur Babu ran and wept at his feet and said, Master, I will never doubt you again. Then there was the Nahabat, where Sarada Devi lived and served the Master. She would peek through the bamboo screen to see the kirtan in Sri Ramakrishna's room, and we see the proximity of the Nahabat to his room. And we relive the drama in our own eyes and through her eyes. And to walk down the lanes at Dakshineshwar and feel the proximity of the places connected with Sri Ramakrishna brings everything more into focus in our meditation. Once Swami Sarvadevananda shared with us the interior prelude to his morning meditation. When he could no longer go to the shrine in the morning or to the arati in the temple in the evening, we would go to his room in the morning and sit with him. He shared that he would begin his meditation by mentally traveling to places of pilgrimage in India, where he had received a special darshan, including the Jagannath temple at Puri, where he had received his highest experience at that time, and Kanchivaram in South India. It was in Kanchivaram, South India, where Swami was accompanied by Sister Lalita, one of the Mead sisters, at whose family home Vivekananda stayed in the winter of 1899 to 1900, and is now the Vivekananda House of South Pasadena, owned by the Vedanta Society of Southern California. It's a cultural landmark. Being a Westerner, Sister Lalita was not allowed to enter the temple. And so both Swami and Sister stood in the courtyard outside of the Shiva temple when a light came from the temple to the place where they were standing. And it struck them both with a blissful vibration and they both